to Makin Music. Today we've got a special show. We've got John Hernandez from the Roland Corporation. He's our district sales manager. And I've got Tim Breen from Guitar Showcase. He's the purchasing manager there. And we're going to show you how some of this new narcotic digital gear works. A little different than some of these shows I do. I do some of the, we did a tube amplifier show. We did Makin guitars. So tell me about this Fantom X6, John. What do we got here?
Well, we're going to show some tube guitar amplification. Smoke and mirrors magic in here.
So you're going to show me how that sounds?
I can show you how that sounds. We can actually take a guitar. In fact, we were just doing in the beginning. All those sounds, tube emulations, and everything are coming straight from this keyboard.
Now, both you guys, every noise that I heard was coming from this keyboard.
Straight from this keyboard.
That amp just makes it louder.
The amp just makes it louder, exactly.
Cool. So what basic functions, what do we got built into this thing?
Okay, so this is the Fantom series of Roland keyboards, and I like to call these production stations, as opposed to a general term thrown around these days are workstations. But this is the next level above a standard workstation. This particular keyboard has 4 elements to it that I like to break down. It has the sound engine part, which is just, the basic sounds, and then it has a full sequencer in it, and that's what we can compose songs with. So we can create songs from the beginning all the way to the end, and I'll show you that in a few minutes.
Well, John, a sequencer is a digital recorder, right?
It's a digital recorder for MIDI, which is the sounds within the keyboard itself.
So how many sounds does this?
Oh, there's over 1,000, and this can be expanded to have, oh boy, depending on what you get, thousands of sounds.
So you can access any sounds you want.
Yes.
And start assigning those to tracks or playing them on the keyboard or both.
Right.
I noticed I heard drums, that's in there.
Right, this has a drum machine built in with a ton of different styles right out of the box. Just turn it on, press a button, choose a drum style, and you're done. Or, of course, you can make your own.
Well, now, what if we don't have a bass guitar on stage? Can you turn Tim's guitar into a bass? Is that sort of thing possible?
Yeah, that's possible. Or, of course, we have great bass sounds in here, which I'll show you in a few
minutes. On the
minutes.
keyboard?
Yeah, right on the keyboard.
Okay, so it definitely is a sound engine.
Right, definitely sound engine, definitely a sequencer.
Sequencer, digital sort of recorder there. Okay.
Right. And the other thing that it is it's a full-blown sampler, which means that it'll take any performance I'm playing and it will quickly put that and turn it into a piece of audio. So what we can do is then we can just play back the audio. And what's great about the sampling section is that, there it is right there, is what I just did is that anything I play goes in and records, and now it's a piece of audio that I could send to a computer, make a CD from, use it as a loop, whatever. That's also built in. Then there's a 4th element. And the 4th element is very, very cool. It's a new addition, and that is a full-blown 8-track digital recorder. And so what we're going to do later is Tim's going to play guitar straight into the keyboard, and it's going to record the guitar parts, and I'm going to record some MIDI parts, and we're going to combine the whole thing together. So that's what we're going to do with this.
Sounds great. Can we hear a little more of what we're doing?
Yeah, so what I'll do now is I'll just play 2 or 3 sounds. The first sound you heard is a piano. The piano sample in here is pretty phenomenal. It has 800 sample points. That means there's 800 little pieces of recording to make up this sample. So every note has its own sample, and at every level. So I can play it very lightly. And play it heavier, so it really responds like a real piano would respond. And on top of that, we don't have it right here, but I invite you to go onto the Roland website and take a look at this. But there's actually a picture I'm looking at in color, a big color screen, of a grand piano. And one of the things we've done is we've emulated a piano lid, so I can actually close the lid or open the lid all the way up, and you can see this.
That changes the tone?
It changes the tone. It
gives us more volume? And
well, it gives it more openness, like opening a piano.
And is that the kind, I know you're a sound engineer too, as well as a musician. Now, is that the kind of thing that you would do in your recording studio?
Yes. In fact, on the record that we just finished, the rock opera Illumin, and this is a true story, we had Chick Corea's Bosendorfer 9-foot grand piano that we ended up replacing some piano parts on. Well, there was another song called Return to Love where we used this large grand piano from the Roland series. And we listened to that, and we listened to the Bosendorfer back and forth, and we ended up using the Roland sample on that. It's that good.
Now, how much is a Bosendorfer worth?
You could buy about 60 of these for that.
For the price of those.
Or more in that case.
And the reason is that we actually digitally record these samples. And you said how many? 800?
There's 800.
points.
So every little nuance of a piano is in here. And that's right out of the box.
Right.
And if you want, we have different kinds of grand pianos on different cards that go right in here. We've got Italian Fazioli grands. We've got Steinway. We've got a choice to choose from, as well as thousands of other sounds.
Different sounds are equally sampled. I mean, I know the piano is the keystone. Everybody compares to how good is your grand piano.
Exactly.
But you do have, I mean, every other sound. I mean, like horns. Do we have horns and things
Horns.
like that?
There's also a brand new electric piano board that just came out. So all that detail I explained on the grand piano, well, imagine that for the best Rhodes ever made, a Rhodes that was completely reconfigured, I mean, cleaned up and tuned. So a Rhodes and the clavinet, even to the point where I can choose on the clavinet the pickups that I want. If I want the high or low, the bright pickup. And on the electric piano, there's a screen in here like I did with the lid open and closing. There's actually a screen that turns it into different eras of vintage electric piano. So that's the kind of detail that you can find in Roland keyboards. And the sound speaks for itself. That's really the bottom line. So I'll play just a couple of other sounds in here, and then we can move on. So one of the sounds that I really love, and this is a very, very difficult sound to do in a keyboard, is a good acoustic guitar. So this is a flamenco guitar. Squeak.
Cool.
So,
That's
and all the sounds are similar to this in its what I call the nuance. And this for me is the biggest thing. Being a producer, I look for the nuance in this. There's all the keyboards out there, they're really good. But when you get to the little stuff, that's, for me, is what makes the difference between something that's really good and something that's really great. So,
subtleties, okay.
and this will be the last sound I play, otherwise I'll be here all day. It's about here. So this sounds reaction, I play it light. Or heavy.
Cool.
Okay. So let's have some fun. Let's go to the next step. So Gary, you asked me about a drum machine earlier.
So you got drums?
We've got drums.
Now, can you do your own?
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll do that really briefly here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly choose a standard rock pattern. And there's all kinds of different patterns, but I'll just choose one. So here's one here. Okay, so there's a great, easy to use standard rock pattern. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do two demonstrations at once. So there's the drum machine. And now what I want to do is I'm going to turn this piece of MIDI information into a piece of audio. And this is right now a very, very popular thing to do, which is turning a piece of audio into a piece of MIDI. And so I'm going to do that right now. I'm sorry, turning a piece of MIDI into a piece of audio. What's common today is to take pieces of CDs and loops, different loops, and create whole songs that way. So I can go ahead and do that right here. So it's done. So that quickly, it just now, what you're hearing is the audio. And if you were to see the screen, you'd see waveforms. If any of you out there have seen computer screen with all these fancy waveforms and everything on it, that same screen is in here. So I just made a perfect 2-bar loop in audio that quickly.
Ready
So,
to go to a CD.
ready to go to a CD. I can do all kinds of things to it. I won't take a lot of time with that. But one of the things I can do with it that's very popular in a software environment now is take chunks of this piece of audio and assign them to different pads. And it just did that just quickly. While I was talking, I pressed the buttons and I split up that one loop into little segments. And imagine doing that with a CD or part of your own music, or take your song and chop it up and reassemble it again. That's the power of this. So all that is in the sampling section. So now let's put that together and make a small song. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a drum track, and this time you asked about making your own drums. So I'm going to make my own drum pattern right now. And
You are a drummer too. Oh, we're not supposed to tell.
yes. However, it's a lot different playing drums on drums than it is on keyboards. So what I want to do is use the keyboard here to make my drum sound.
What are you dialing up a kit?
I'm dialing up a kit. Since I like to be a little different, I'm going to dial up this kit called Neo World, which incorporates a lot of world instruments. So it's kind of a hybrid kit using tablas for the kick drums and regular snare drums and all kinds of very, very cool instrumentation in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make just a short loop phrase, which is a great way to start a song. Just kind of get a groove to go. And I'm going to give myself a 1-bar count in, and I'm going to do a 4-measure song. So when I press this play button, just like on a regular recorder, it's going to give me a 1-bar count. Okay, so that's what I recorded so far, and what I just did is I put it in a rehearsal mode. Rehearsal mode's great because now I can find where other things are without ever taking it out of a record mode. I'm going to add my next part now. I'm going to start on the 1. I was just practicing there. Okay, so now that part's in there. Now I'm going to find some other sounds. Ah, there we go. All right, that's enough. I don't get too carried away. So here we go. Here's what I just made. Now, naturally, something like that screams for sitar. So I'm going to choose a sitar in here. And this is fun because there's not only your standard piano sounds and those types of sounds, but there's all the ethnic sounds. And again, this is just right out of the box without me having to buy any additional pieces or anything. This is just the way it comes. So there's all these choices of sound, which is really, really great. And so what I'm looking at now is an index, basically. And on this index, it shows me all the sounds that are on board. So here's my... So that sounds good. So now I'm going to use this. Enough. So here's what I have so far. Now Tim's probably freaking out going, what the hell is he doing? Excuse me. Anyway, so here's what I got so far. All right, one more track and we won't waste any more time, and then I'll have Tim do some fun stuff. So what I'm going to do now is put a bass on there. And conveniently, if that's normally where I play on the keyboard and it's not low enough, I can just drop my octaves down so I don't have to reach all the way down there, because I'm getting older and I'm getting lazy. I don't want to reach that far down. So here we go. Okay, so all right, now, so those are my MIDI tracks. In other words, all the things I just did were from the keyboard, and those are what's called in MIDI. So now we want to add audio, which is guitar. So I'm going to go into here now, and now select my audio tracks. And again, if you were seeing the screen, it would show me I have 8 audio tracks, and I can choose whether they're stereo or mono tracks. Excuse me. So let's plug Tim in and see where he's at here. And
this is also an effects processor.
Yes.
And Tim's effects are actually coming through this keyboard.
Exactly. So let me talk about that really quickly before we start, because this is a really, really important thing. Normally, you would need to buy either take a microphone or mic a guitar amp, or buy a floorboard or a bunch of pedals and such to get this sound. This has a technology in it called modeling. Some of you may have heard of that, but in essence what it is it's a dynamic snapshot of the real amplifier. So if I choose an amp, and I've got many, many amps, I can choose a Matchless or Vox or Marshall or Fender Twin or our own Roland JC120 or a Peavey or Boogies. All these amps are in here. This one I chose a Soldano amp, and that's level 1. Now when I choose that amp in the screen, all the controls are on there. So the preamp gain, the master gain, the treble, the bass, all the stuff you've seen on your tube amps. And those are great, don't get me wrong, but it's hard to put tubes in here and make it work right. So we have that, but here's what I can do. I can choose then the speaker cabinet that goes with it. Anything from a single 10-inch cabinet all the way up to a Marshall stack, to a Boogie stack, to a Peavey stack, to a JC120 speaker combination. So I can choose any amp and any speaker cabinet. And beyond that, I can actually choose if the speaker cabinet was mic'd with a condenser mic or a standard high impedance style mic. And so I get very, very much different tones. I can even choose how far the mic is from that cabinet. So this is the kind of detail. So Tim, just play a little bit. So all that pretty amazing tube sound emulation is coming straight through the keyboard. As you can see, he's plugged right here. There's nothing, no smoke and mirrors here. This is the real deal. That's why I call this a production studio, because everything's in it, including now the audio recorder. So now I'm going to select and give him a 1-bar count in, and just have him put a 4-bar phrase on here, whatever we need to do. Ready? Okay. And so, as a producer, I decided that was good enough to keep. So let's listen to what we just did. Okay, so there it is. So that's one part. Now I have a mixer here, and we'll get to that at the end. But let's go ahead and do a track.
I'll play a little louder on this one.
Okay.
Because that one was obviously a little quiet.
Okay.
Cool.
Righty then. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
1-bar count. just a great thing. All right. So here's what we have so far. How about just a rhythm, just a power chord, maybe an E, just to let it ring. Okay, and let's go with that. All right.
How far can you go? How many of these can you put
Well,
on
we can
here?
do 8 tracks.
8 tracks, separate
Right.
tracks.
Separate audio
all with,
tracks.
All with all separate controls.
Right, and we're going to get to that. And
What
that's
about
again,
tracks within the
well,
MIDI
the MIDI, you can do 16 tracks by itself.
by itself?
If you wanted to go more, you can attach another MIDI device and do an additional 16 tracks
Okay.
on its sequencer. So
Sounds
it's
like
a lot.
Plenty, yeah.
And again, we can bounce and we can do some other
And
things.
you can mix them together. And
We can mix them together.
Sure.
But for the sake of time, this is good right here. Let's just keep with this.
Yeah, we only have about 5 more minutes, so we're going to have to.
So let's rock. Okay, so here's what we got. So here's the power chords. Let's just check the audio.
Nice.
All right, so that's there. Now I have my other mixer, and I'm going to go ahead and just turn those drums down a little bit. Even though I'm a drummer and I like to have drums really loud, let's give some space here. So I'm going to turn this drums down a little bit, and
So you can mix all the parts the way you
I
like
can mix
them.
all the parts, and I can go a step further than that. I can actually automate this mix, record my fader sliders, just like on a really expensive console. But here's just a down and dirty. And one last thing I'll do is, because let's say all my mix is done now. Now I can actually add reverb, and I can add chorus, and I can add multiple effects on top of this mix. So if I were doing vocals, I'd probably want to add some stuff there. But here's another thing that's very, very cool. This has a mastering suite for CD burning, meaning I can take my finished mix, and when you go into a studio and you do your final mix, you bring it into what's called a mastering suite or a mastering studio. And that's the final polish before the CD is burned. This actually has that software built in, which is pretty doggone amazing for keyboard to have that in there. And it's here. And so listen to it, and I'm going to kick it in as it's playing. So you hear all the levels just got more present and hotter. So that's the mastering tools kit that I just kicked in right during there to show the contrast between with it and without it. Now, once this is all done now, I hit this one button sampling. I hit one button called resampling. It takes all my MIDI and all the audio and combines it into a stereo audio file, what's called a WAV file. I take the USB out of this, plug it into whether I have a Mac or a PC. Up comes the icon of the Fantom, and sure enough, it looks like a hard drive. I double-click on the icon of the Fantom. I see my file that I just named John's song. Click that, drag it over to my desktop, put it into any audio CD burning program, and now I have a finished CD. I can also go the other direction. Let's say if I have a bunch of samples of different sounds or sound effects on my computer, I can take those and drag those over, and it'll load into the keyboard itself. So it's a two-way street I can work with.
Well, let's hear you guys play. We got about 2 minutes to go. Let's hear you guys play, and we'll just go out that way. And I want to thank you guys for coming. Tim, thank you for coming, and John, appreciate it. I know we're going to do another show next week on you, and I want to hear about your band, No Nation, and a CD that you've done. And we'll do that next week, show, because we're kind of out of time. Go ahead, you guys play a little while.
But we're just going to
as we go.
Do this little piece of music, very short. And I'd like to thank you, Gary, for giving us the opportunity at Roland and Boss and Eterol to have some time to show this great stuff, because it just doesn't get out there enough, and it's so
fantastic.
Good. It really is. And Guitar Showcase is a really great spot. I was just telling Gary on the way here, I was shopping there as a kid. I have a long legacy there. So, all right, so let's go ahead and play. So.